Nunca México se había propuesto en 8 años hacer una reducción de ese tamaño en todo lo que lleva el siglo.
Good afternoon to each and every one of you, and good evening. I'm Barry Betcherdan. I'm the head of the Washington Post correspondence in Mexico, and I'm delighted to see each and every one of you here. And I have the great pleasure to welcome to Marcelo Ebrard, the Foreign Affairs Minister. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. Of course, we're starting with the topic of the climate. So, Mr. Minister, during a visit to India, you said that it was a maximum priority to accelerate the energy transition in Mexico because everything is changing faster than what we thought of. And of course, this government came with a very strong commitment of strengthening the industry, the most traditional industry, the state industry, PMEX, the CFE, the Power Energy Company. So this change is faster than what we thought of, Mr. Chancellor. We have a similar challenge. All the countries have to change a turbine of a plane and continue flying. You have to do both things at the same time. And what is new is that the goals that we have set forth together with the United States and Canada in particular, we have to say that John Kerry has been a key factor, are more ambitious goals. And as a result, aside from what is convenient to this energy transition, it's also a topic of survival of our industry and our capability to export, because we cannot deface from the changes that are happening in the US and Canada, of course. And we've also spoken about these ambitious goals that you're going to require an investment of around $48 billion US. Where is this money coming from? Well, we're going to have public investment and private investment alike. That is what we have to do. There's no other way of doing this. However, this is a figure that is reachable, that is attainable. These are not figures that are out of our reach, and they're not out of the reach of our country. And right now, we're going to have to multiply, but the solar plant in Puerto Peñasco that is being manufactured is going to start in this government and is going to be in the next 3 governments. So we are working now on the financing model of these 3 plants, 3 new solar plants in the northern part of the country. And you've also said and spoken that there is a support on behalf of the United States. Up to what point have you reached an agreement in these conversations? We are reaching very far. We're working together with the John Kerry team, and we are working with them for the expansion that I just mentioned, and we're going to have to add private investment because the private investment is going to play a key role in this expansion. And talking about the private investment, and now there is a huge controversy right now in the framework of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico trade agreement. As you know, these countries, the USMCA, these countries say that Mexico favors the domestic industry, the state industries, that is not giving the same level, and that could even reach a panel of a kind of a dispute resolution with the first partners or amongst the first trade partners in Mexico. So how are you going to face, or how Mexico is going to face this? I would say, first of all, the panels are good news in North America, because before that, we didn't even have panels. So right now, having a panel works, first of all, as something more fair to solve the differences. And secondly, it's very powerful, so we don't have to reach to a misagreement. So in a panel, if you don't reach agreement, the panel is the design of the panel is avoid it, not to have it, because you want to reach agreements before. That is why you have chats and you have series of previous sessions and meetings. And of course, in the case, for example, of the panel regarding energy, that are 4 topics that are being inquired upon, I would say that the likelihood to reach an agreement is quite high before you reach a panel. Of course, that is my forecast, because the incentives are very high. And on the other hand, the mere fact that Mexico increased its NDCs from 22 to 35%, the reduction is going to bring you to more than twofold your clean energies, the generation of clean energy in Mexico. You're talking about 80 gigas at least, and that means that the size of your market, to call it somehow, of clean energy grew twofold, and your need of a private investment grew twofold. So therefore, the original terms of the panel changed. And do you feel there is interest in this part of these private investors? Given the difficulties that have taken place with all the licenses, etc., well, we have a very good investment in several fields related to energy. For example, liquefied gas, LP. Mexico is going to be one of the main exporters of LP in the next 3 years, if everything is on its way. And it's a liquefied gas, and all that is private investment. So let me tell you that I would say that as far as what I could anticipate, I see an increase in private investment in the next few years because of these decisions that are in synchrony with the decisions U.S. is taking regarding so we don't reach more than 1.5 degrees in the middle of the century. And talking about these commitments of not increasing to reaching this 35%, so this of course means a commitment. This is also for the 2030. And how? Well, of course, or before we can. Yes, you cannot say I'm going to do it in 2060. You have to do it now. Yes, of course. And how can you ensure that these commitments continue? Because of course, we have a new government. There's going to be a new government very close. The cost of changing something like this would be huge. A government, I say that they would say, no, now we're going to reduce 35%. No, very likely they will increase the percentage, because the region where we're at with our main trade partners that are, of course, United States and Canada and the European Union, the standards are very high. They are our strategic partners, so we could not have any margin to reduce the number. The other way around, we're going to increase it further later on. Okay. And as you said before, you're going to have to start immediately, because these are huge ambitions. And aside from the solar plan of Sonora and also the plan for an aeolic installation or wind energy installation in Oaxaca, what else is coming, or what else can you see? Well, here we have to see the hydroelectric plants in Mexico. That, let me tell you that you have an important lag in the generation of clean energy that could increase. You have wind energy investments that have been published by the CFE in Oaxaca, and this is going to happen in this administration. Between this year and next year, we already have, these are federal property, so you don't have to negotiate the land, because the land is given, it's federal land. So you have the capture of methane by Pemex and the new methane commitments that Mexico adopted that were proposed by John Kerry recently, a few months back. So I would say that the truth is that now we're in a stress of time in order to comply with what we have agreed to do. And we are going to honor to do from now until there's a change of president. So now we'll go into another topic. There are so many topics in the bilateral agreement. So, of course, right now it is so important that topic of fentanyl is a huge priority in the United States. However, what we can see is that between the two countries, it's been very difficult to reach agreements up to the basic things, like, for example, if Mexico is an important producer of the synthesis of fentanyl. So how do you explain that there's these different perspectives in a topic that is so important? Well, I think that you have two parts, like in other topics. One part is how are you going to reduce substantially everything that is the different types of derivatives. And I was telling you that right now there is chlorhydrate salts with methamphetamines, etc. They're new. So even the speed of changes of these products is just surprising. So the question is, how are we going to reduce the arrival of chemical precursors to Mexico and the United States? Mexico has more controlled substances than the United States. And one of the first things that we agreed in the meeting is let's have the same list. And the UN has 33, we have 82, and Canada has like 38, and US has I don't know how many, but there's a first point where we don't even have the same list of precursors of what do we want to control. The second one is the three countries are reviewing less than 5% of the load. You cannot review more, because of this mere fact that there's thousands of containers going through our borders. So now we're going to improve the system to concentrate in the precursors of the list that I just mentioned. So the idea is to substantially reduce the precursors from Asia to America and in America amongst the countries. So this is what we agreed upon. So we have a public management of the topic. Who's to blame? I can tell you that fentanyl is a pandemic because it's sold in every corner. So there was a famous case, I don't know if you recall, with Purdy Pharma and all of that. However, what do we win by blaming others and staying there? You can produce, for example, a DA agent said 80% is produced in Mexico. Can you prove it? And I don't think it's true, even if it is. So let's say these things. This is a strategic error. We're going to get divided. We want to join forces. So if we persevere, if we show the progress we have and we win mutual trust, we're going to have good results. That is a path I am going to work on, and that's why we have an understanding. Of course, this architect, and then at this point, we are in a very unusual point. There's politicians in the United States that are even suggesting and appealing to the use of the military force of the United States to attack these labs or to other things. Do you worry that in the Republican Party there's a growing number of politicians that are talking about this idea? We are busy, and we would never allow something like that to happen. I told somebody the other day over my dead body, but don't think this is a declaration that is simple. But these type of things, I don't think that nobody in this room would allow that to happen. And secondly, I don't think it's viable either, because this is a topic to say Mexico is to blame, and therefore we're going to have to send our forces from the U.S. to Mexico. But out of the conference, they could have asked the senator, how are you selling fentanyl in the corner or via internet? For example, another agreement we reached in this meeting is working with Facebook and Google and TikTok, etc. And now Elon Musk, I haven't spoken about it, but I'll see it next time about Twitter. But in particular, all social networks, all social media, the sale of fentanyl and derivatives, let's deal with what we are implementing with terrorism. So if we come with an ISIS message, we relocate it, we isolate it, and we remove it from the network. So why don't we do it with somebody that is selling fentanyl? And that is another of the agreements that are feasible to implement. And we're going to have a social debate where you're going to promote ethics and responsibility, and then we're going to avoid not to put aside the joint efforts that we're doing, because then what would be the message? The countries are going to be in elections, so what is the message we want to convey to our people? What is the reaction in Mexico? But I do not know what is the reaction in Mexico if a military act from the U.S. against these labs, what would happen? I don't think that can be done. It's not feasible because you would destroy in one act all the cooperation between Mexico and the United States in security reasons, and I don't think this is reasonable for no type of government. I see it as a campaign resource, but as an option of real policy, I don't see it. And this would have huge implications. And in Mexico, is the main trade partner of the United States and vice versa. Can you imagine a measure of this type, what it would bring as a consequence? And on the other hand, you have a community of 38 million of people in the United States that are Mexican in origin. So it is not very simple to make a decision of that nature. I don't think it's impossible, but I see it very unlikely. There's another discussion about the possibility of a legislation that has been proposed on calling the drug trafficking groups as terrorist groups, as foreign terrorist groups, and that would be connected to the same. But even though legally you wouldn't have the same repercussions, and I see it very unlikely because it hasn't been the first time it's being proposed. It's being proposed, and they've been doing this for a long time. And the other thing is that what are you going to do with fentanyl in the United States? What are you going to do with the distribution of fentanyl in the United States? And that would be the first question we would have to ask ourselves. Yes. But then would it have an impact? This assignment would have an impact if that legislation were to be approved. It would have a negative impact in the bilateral relationship, but we would not have a military intervention. That I don't think it could happen because that would be a fracture between Mexico and the United States. There would be a huge fracture. Why? Can you imagine? Can you imagine that they send you military forces? No. If this legislation were to be approved, because it's an announcement, and that direction is going to have a negative impact, I believe. That would be my forecast, and that is going to give you better results. No. That's the worst thing. You have a high cost, and it's not going to give you good results. You're going to have very poor results if that were to be approved, because the following day you're going to continue having fentanyl in the street, or at least a derivative of it. So do you feel there's going to be a resolution about that debate now, that if you produce or not fentanyl in Mexico, or it's produced fentanyl? It depends. There's a big confusion about what type of fentanyl. There's a great confusion about the topic. There's many substances that are circulating that are called fentanyl, and there's different types of processes. Some are very complicated and complex. And I would say that the fentanyl precursors, as far as we know, are not produced in Mexico, most of them, as far as our knowledge reaches. So this is a topic of controlling the trade that comes to Mexico. That is why I started with the containers, at least so far. Okay, yes. And in a different topic, migration. Is there a concern on behalf of the U.S. government that now they're going to raise the Title 42, that there could be a wave of migrants? So that is a measure that will allow the United States to kick out people that are asking asylum for health reasons. So how is Mexico being prepared for this moment? And what we see that has worked in the time that I've been in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where we have to see these topics as well as the economy and others, and what the relationships with the United States. So what I've seen also is the strategy with Biden regarding Venezuelans, Cubans, Nicaraguan people, and Bolivian people, that is opening a procedure, a regular procedure, where you can ask for a request, and they tell you what you have to do, whether the requirement, and they answer to you if you can come. So they've come to the U.S., for example, more than 34,000 people through the system. And that has caused the incentive to put yourself in hands in the black market that tell you that you're going to get there with great uncertainty, kind of breaks apart. plunges. That is the only measure that has had such a huge impact in such little time. This was a notable drop. And so I don't know if the Biden administration is going to take this experience for what's coming next in the month of May. And Mexico still is going to have, let's say, we have a permanent table. We're also talking with Guatemala and Honduras and Salvador. And of course, we're going to try amongst all of us to have the most intelligent possible reason, but we're starting with this basis, plus investment in Central America. Mexico is investing in Central America. We presented the report, it's very interesting, and the investment in the zones where we have greater flows towards Mexico has had a meaningful impact with regards to the flow, the migration flow towards our country. We already presented that. Thank you. I'm sorry, but we're about to finish. I'm eating Mauricio's time. He's going to get angry. This is a mandated question. If you are the next president of Mexico, so how would you change foreign policies towards the United States? Well, towards the United States, I would try to consolidate a very important scaffolding that we've been building that goes from the panels all the way to having a security problem with an annual action plan amongst both countries and expand it to many other fields. For example, trying to do synchrony in the investment, economic and infrastructure investment decisions. Something else I'd like to fix is that there's more or less 280,000 students that are brilliant from several countries in Asia, China. Today, in the best universities in the United States and in Mexico, we have 15,000. So there's a huge field of action there, and connection and liaison of our educational institutions, health, research with the best institutions in the United States. That is what I think that we could achieve. Fantastic. So, Mr. Chancellor, thank you for being with us, and we are running out of time. And also, thank you to all of you for being here. And my peer, Kevin Seif, is going to be a few minutes to interview the governor of Yucatan. Thank you so much.